Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lilith Astrology. My name is Adama, and I'm your astrologer, and today I'm going to be running down Chiron through the signs and houses and what this energy means when it's placed within the birth chart. I believe this is an important placement to know, and I actually work with Chiron heavily, and I believe it has an extreme importance in terms of understanding your current life and any wounds and difficulties that you've had to battle in this life, how to resolve them, how to move past them. And also, it's an indicator of past life as well. So, if you would like to know where your Chiron is specifically in your birth chart, contact me for a natal reading, and I can not only go over your entire birth chart, but help you understand this very karmic and important placement in your birth chart. So, let's get started. So, who is Chiron in ancient mythology, and what does this placement, what does this energy mean? What does this archetype mean in astrology? So, Chiron was a centaur, and he was born out of a violent rape, and his mother abandoned him. So, he entered this world in a not so positive way and experienced a deep wound within himself. And through healing other people and helping other people throughout his life, he was able to heal that wounding upon childbirth and, heal those abandonment wounds and scars that he had had. So basically, wherever Chiron is actually a comet. It is not a planet. It is a comet or an asteroid. And basically, wherever this is placed in your birth chart, this is actually your spiritual wounding. And this could be in past life, this could be in early childhood, but it's an area of life that has been difficult for you. And it's an area to focus on in terms of healing oneself through helping others. So that is a little rundown on the energy of Chiron. So we're going to start off with Chiron in Aries and Chiron in the first house. So the Chiron in Aries generation is actually, they were born in 1968 to 1977. This is actually a generational orbit, and Chiron's orbit is actually very irregular. So it's not like the years are, every 7 years it changes signs. It actually varies. And we are actually in Chiron in Aries right now. And the last time before this prior generation, Chiron was in Aries during the Roaring 20s. And so basically this generation grew up, they had a tough time. And their parents encouraged them to, toughen up. Basically, they were, forged from fire. These people are tough as nails. They were born when there was the Vietnam War and a lot of protesting and unrest in the country. People were not sure, if we're going to be bombed and blown up the next day. There was a lot of fear. So growing up in that type of climate, these people are, have a hard exterior and they can have a tough time showing their emotion. So that doesn't matter where, like you could have Chiron in Aries in the 7th house or Chiron in Aries in the 8th house. So basically the sign that it's placed in is in what way this energy manifests. So these people have a wounding in terms of themselves. Aries rules the self. It's the first house as well. So it's first house energy. So they were taught any difficulty or any pain they were experiencing to suck it up and move forward. So these people can carry a lot of personal trauma in terms of who they are and just feeling stifled in terms of expressing themselves and who they are. So when Chiron is in the first house, basically this wounding can play out in terms of yourself. The first house rules who you are. So you could have Chiron in Taurus, but if it's placed in the first house, this Chiron wounding energy is going to play out in your everyday life in terms of who you are. So an example of some Chiron in first house energy is someone who's bullied as a child and not made to feel like they fit in, made to feel like who they are is a crime and they're not good enough. They may even feel that way in the eyes of their family and in the eyes of their parents. In society, they may feel like maybe aesthetically there might be something different about them. It may not also just be their personality, but they could aesthetically be different than the norm and just feel vilified or feel that they don't ever fit in. So once they have their, Chiron return, that usually happens mid-40s, when Chiron returns back to the same place, same sign that it was when you were born. Basically, these types of people can, be healers in terms of helping people cope with, self-esteem issues, help advocate for the black sheep. And through, helping other people in that area of life, they will heal themselves. So this is, it's a painful placement, especially for children, because you don't know why people can't accept you. So that then creates pain that you have to deal with throughout your life. So Chiron in Taurus, or Chiron in the second house. When the wounded healer is placed in the sign of self-worth and material possessions, earthly goods, how you earn an income. Basically, for example, the generation that grew up and was born during Chiron and Taurus was during the Great Depression. And then the latest generation that's alive, that was born during Chiron and Taurus, these children were born between 1976 and 1984, and that is really when you saw, the rise of the middle class, or upper middle class, I should say. That is when cars became a little more high tech, computers. There was more widespread media and marketing to people, versus, everybody getting the same thing. There was just different levels of living. So that created a big struggle for these children in terms of not having enough, or feeling wounded in terms of their material possessions, especially children that grew up through the Great Depression. A lot of their parents just didn't have enough and didn't have enough money. So there's a deep wounding in terms of just not having enough, or feeling unstable. And that also, bled over into their self-worth. These children, now have to deal with and heal their entire life to basically feel like they are worthy enough, and that their material possessions don't define them and don't define their self-worth. So that is the struggle that a Chiron in Taurus has on a daily basis. And basically, once a Chiron in Taurus, reaches Chiron return and starts to take steps in healing themselves, they can realize that, perhaps they could become, a financial coach, or somebody that helps people get out of debt and helps them figure out their money situation. They could also be a self-esteem coach. It's kind of similar to Chiron and Aries, but that's more in terms of the self and the body, and who you present yourself to the world as. But this is really how you feel about yourself. So there's a wounding in terms of that. And basically, they can heal themselves by helping other people, in terms of their self-esteem, in terms of their self-worth. Especially with women, us in the workplace, we don't lean in enough, and we don't ask for what we're worth in terms of compensation. So someone like this could really help women in terms of career coaching, because honestly, getting ahead in your career, a lot of it has to do with how you feel about yourself. And so moving on to Chiron in the second house. So this is the Taurus house. This is the house of self-worth and earn income and how you make a living. So whatever sign this is placed in, this is where this wounding will play out in terms of how you earn an income and how you make your money. So for instance, if someone has Chiron in Aries in the second house, basically their lack of self-worth and their spiritual wounding in terms of who they are is holding them back from attaining the material possessions that they want. And that fear is making these fears essentially materialize. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So moving on to Chiron in Gemini, which happens to be my Chiron placement. So this is where Chiron's orbit it starts to get wonky because there aren't really set dates. It kind of goes retrograde and goes back into a sign. I would say about 1984 to 1988, give or take, is about when the Chiron in Gemini generation, was born, the current one that's alive today. And basically, when Chiron is in Gemini, there is a wounding in terms of speech and communication and thought processes. We tend to believe that no one really wants to hear us. This could be from a wounding in past life, depending on the placement in the birth chart, and just feeling, stifled and not have the ability to have your thoughts accepted and speak your mind. Or this could be from a childhood trauma where basically, you were made to feel stupid and that your thoughts were not just enough and right enough and made sense to everyone else. So you clammed up and, you didn't feel like you could really speak. And what's interesting is actually our generation kind of grew up with the whole reality TV phenomena, and another trait of Chiron Gemini is the need and want to gossip and kind of exhibit some of the lower level Gemini traits, and so our generation can get a little addicted to gossip in terms of celebrities and reality TV and seeing into everyday people's lives. So I think that's a pretty interesting lineup. And basically, like, a lot of us are still going through it. I don't think, we're not going to be to our Chiron return in a while. But basically, when one reaches Chiron return and finally realizes, in fact, what has wounded them and held them back in their life, they basically can help heal other people in terms of how to express themselves. They could make great speech therapists. They can help, children who have trouble writing, or they can help people who have trouble writing or expressing themselves. They also can be great, at speeches and expressing themselves once they've harnessed that and kind of put their guard down. We could speak a little too much or too little. But, one thing is that a Chiron in Gemini is always that happy to help other people. I think one thing, too, is similar with Chiron in Aries, even though this is an air placement, Chiron in Gemini is more of a mind over matter type of wounding. So Chiron in Geminis try to kind of put out of their mind this anxiety and wounding around speech and thought process, and they kind of try to put it on the rug and not deal with it, which is not healthy at all as well. So similar to Chiron in Gemini, when Chiron is placed in the third house, this wounding is manifested in terms of your speech, your communication, and thought processes. The third house is a Gemini house. So basically, one can be extremely unsure, especially during early childhood. And this is kind of even stem from past life, and you've brought over this, this wounding into your current life. Basically, you just felt like your ideas weren't good enough. You may have been extremely and painfully shy. And just really unable to express yourselves. That's like a very severe Chiron in the third house. You kind of just had not been able to put together as articulate of thought as other people. And that, I think, is because you just felt like you weren't able to do so. And so, another very severe Chiron in the third house is someone that may have some speech disabilities or maybe even mute. So that to me is a severe Chiron in the third house, but it can take many levels. But this is where it will manifest itself in one's life. So Chiron in Cancer. So when Chiron is in the sign of maternal instinct and nurturing, the moon rules the sign of Cancer. Basically, these people, they have the ability to nurture and help other people, but they did not receive that themselves. There can be an extreme wounding in terms of not feeling loved enough by family, not feeling loved enough by the mother, and feeling abandoned. and feeling ultimately not lovable. So, you know how they say you can't give from an empty cup? Basically, these Chiron and Cancer people continuously try to give from an empty cup and then just feel unhappy and unfulfilled and unnurtured themselves. So this is a difficult position in terms of inner growth, especially as a child, because if you're not getting enough love from your family and these early people that were supposed to love you, it can be a pattern that you recreate throughout your life. And you can draw in partners who don't fulfill you on that level and give you what you need in terms of nurturing, or you can kind of draw in fixer-uppers or people that need nurturing and need a mother and need fixing, and then in return you don't get anything back. You don't get anything in return, so you're kind of expending all of that energy on people like this. Chiron in Cancer was from about 1988 to 1991, basically these people, when they reach Chiron return, or when they really start to realize this part of themselves that has been holding them back, they could really be a healer and a teacher and help people who are in toxic relationships, or people who have family problems and have wounds in terms of the relationship with their mother or relationship with their parents and where they grew up, or people that have never fit in. They really can want to help someone who's the quote-unquote black sheep, or people that may have not been, accepted by society, or they were abandoned by society, and kind of be the mother archetype for other people. And so when Chiron is in the fourth house, there is a wounding. Your wounding plays out in the home. So no matter what sign Chiron is in, the wounding happens, especially during childhood with your family and your early life. You felt that being home was never a comfort for you, and it was never an easy place to be. And, you learned these subconscious feelings because your parents did not create the environment for you to thrive and really feel loved and grow up and feel nurtured. So when Chiron, the wounded healer, is in the sign of fun and play and romance and self-expression, when you were, a child, these traits about you felt ashamed. Perhaps you had parents that, were strict and didn't allow you to go outside and play. They told you needed to study first. They didn't allow you to create. They thought maybe painting or music or doing something in terms of creating something was stupid and was never going to make you money. So you kind of push down these desires to want to create and to want to have fun and to want to be the center of attention and act and sing and dance. You push these needs to the side and basically came to the conclusion that you were not creative and you didn't have the skill, which is, very stifling, and it's just not healthy to not embrace the side of yourself. And someone who evolves past this wounding later in life finally realizes these are the types of people that actually tend to shift careers. They may have been in like a boring job that they thought that their family wanted them to have and their parents wanted them to have, and they end up switching and becoming an actor or becoming a painter, or their true talent shines out and they really are able to exhibit and put it on display for the world. They may have also been made to feel that being the showman and having fun was just stupid. So, and through living life and moving past this, you will then be able to shift and actually do the creative ventures that you want to do. Moving on to Chiron in the fifth house. This is the Leo house. So this is of self-expression and play and fun and gambling and partying. So again, no matter what sign your Chiron is in, this manifested itself in terms of your fun life. Again, you may have had parents who just didn't appreciate fun, didn't want you to have fun, or you may have been in a circumstance where you may not have had enough money to have fun. You may have not had the family life to have fun. There was something that was actually stunting that for you. You may have just been very studious as a child and just completely shunned that part of your life and those needs to really express yourself and express that Leo side. So this is, this is a difficult placement, but I think once you do harness that part of yourself, you are creative and you are someone that should be in the spotlight and that people want to see, and whose art and whose creativity people would love to enjoy. So I think once a Chiron in Leo or Chiron in the 5th house finds themselves, it's a joy for the world and it's a joy for everybody. So Chiron in Virgo. So basically when Chiron is in the sign of Virgo, this is the sign of health and fitness and your everyday duties and tasks and work. This is someone who is actually very good at all these things, but there is a wounding in terms of that behavior. Perhaps, your mother had strange eating habits and you pick those up. And sometimes eating disorders can manifest with a placement like this, or exercise, feeling like a high pressure to really exercise and perform and be a certain way and have your body a certain way. And body image is a huge thing sometimes. But that is like a very intense Chiron in Virgo. But these people become obsessive about health and daily life and diet. They also could become extremely obsessed with work and their schedule, and really become workaholics in the sense of like always having to be busy and always being meticulous. And they can help other people in improving their lives in that way as well. But one thing is sometimes, burnout can happen and they may be doing it too much or to the point where it's just not healthy for them. So it's important to watch out for these type of behaviors with a Chiron in Virgo. But once Chiron in Virgo progresses and they begin to learn to heal themselves, they actually could be great health coaches. They can make great assistants in terms of organizing someone's life and helping them. And through helping other people learn healthy ways of eating, learn healthy ways of exercising and taking care of themselves, they will then heal the wounding and the difficulties that they faced as children or in a past life as well. So this is similar to when Chiron is in the 6th house. This is a Virgo house, and this is all about your daily life, your schedule, fitness, your routine, and health as well. This wounding can play out in your daily life. And actually, sometimes Chiron can really play out in terms of your relationship with your coworkers. I've seen some Chiron in the 6th house just run into some difficulty with getting along with people at work, making the best impression on people at work, or they may feel like a martyr at work and just feel like they don't fit in, or they get kind of passed over in terms of promotions and getting ahead. So, these people also can run into difficulty in terms of taking care of themselves and taking care of their day-to-day and just coping with their day-to-day. So that can be, a little bit of a painful thing because that is your everyday life and that is what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So moving on to Chiron in the 7th house, or Chiron in Libra. So when Chiron is in Libra, Chiron was in Libra about 1995. And basically, people with this placement, they can make excellent counselors. They can make excellent relationship counselors and people that help others in finding, a fair and balanced relationship. But with themselves, there is a huge wounding with that. They find that they can give too much in a relationship. They are codependent and rely too much on a relationship and with others. There can be some difficulty in terms of relationships and just the function of relationships. And this can also go with not only love relationships, but business partnerships. You can feel like you're kind of getting the short end of the stick all the time in terms of your work life and who you form a partnership and who you work with on a day-to-day basis. These people may have had divorced parents or split up parents, or they could have had parents that were just extremely distant and just, weren't loving, didn't have a loving relationship. So you didn't really learn the right way that a relationship is supposed to operate, and you kind of normalize that behavior. So, kind of as I mentioned earlier, when these people start to begin to heal themselves, it can really help others in terms of being treated fairly in their relationships. And this is similar to Chiron in the seventh house. When Chiron is placed in the seventh house of relationships and partnerships, both business and love, balance is here as well. There can be some difficulty and challenges in terms of receiving as well as, giving. These people give and give and give, and they end up getting the short end of the stick and don't receive back. So a lesson for these people is to really find themselves and put themselves first, like find out who they are. The opposite sign is Aries. And this is all about the self and putting yourself first. So find out who you are outside of a relationship and what you really want and what you want back from a relationship, because a lot of Chiron in seventh house or Chiron in Libras don't think about that, and they just think about the other person and think about the partner before thinking about themselves. So that is a way that you can move forward and work with this energy. So when Chiron is in Libra, Chiron was in Libra about 1995. And basically, people with this placement, they can make excellent counselors. They can make excellent relationship counselors and people that help others in finding, a fair and balanced relationship. But with themselves, there is a huge wounding with that. They find that they can give too much in a relationship. They are codependent and rely too much on a relationship and with others. There can be some difficulty in terms of relationships and just the function of relationships. And this can also go with not only love relationships, but business partnerships. You can feel like you're kind of getting the short end of the stick all the time in terms of your work life and who you form a partnership and who you work with on a day-to-day basis. These people may have had divorced parents or split up parents, or they could have had parents that were just extremely distant and just, weren't loving, didn't have a loving relationship. So you didn't really learn the right way that a relationship is supposed to operate, and you kind of normalize that behavior. So, kind of as I mentioned earlier, when these people start to begin to heal themselves, it can really help others in terms of being treated fairly in their relationships. And this is similar to Chiron in the seventh house. When Chiron is placed in the seventh house of relationships and partnerships, both business and love, balance is here as well. There can be some difficulty and challenges in terms of receiving as well as, giving. These people give and give and give, and they end up getting the short end of the stick and don't receive back. So a lesson for these people is to really find themselves and put themselves first, like find out who they are. The opposite sign is Aries. And this is all about the self and putting yourself first. So find out who you are outside of a relationship and what you really want and what you want back from a relationship, because a lot of Chiron in seventh house or Chiron in Libras don't think about that, and they just think about the other person and think about the partner before thinking about themselves. So that is a way that you can move forward and work with this energy. So Chiron in Scorpio or Chiron in the 8th house. So this is where Chiron's orbit starts to get a little tricky. Chiron was in Scorpio like 1996 and 97, and then it moved to other signs. Moved to Sag and moved back. And so basically children now who were born, I guess they're pretty much adults now, I guess. I'm dating myself because I think they're younger than they are. But children with Chiron in Scorpio may have went through some traumatic losses or transitions or transformations in their early childhood and even in past life that had really wounded them or really made life difficult. It could have been a loss of a parent or someone just very integral in their lives. Or they could have also, had some gains. Maybe through the loss of a parent, they gained money. And I think through this loss, through this type of loss, you really walk around with the knowledge that everything dies, so you may be closed off in terms of forming close personal bonds and close personal relationships, because you know that in the end, they're going to leave and they're going to ultimately pass away or die, which is a little morbid to say, but that is the inherent knowledge that you have. And you also, could have experienced power struggles or have some wounding in terms of someone taking away your power when you were younger. And that's something that you are trying to move past today. These people also feel like they could maybe lose themselves from becoming attached, and really just have a fear of attachment. And I think as they progress through this pain in their lives and begin to work through it, they could actually also become good counselors. These people also, with Chiron in the 8th, could have went through a traumatic sexual experience. I think this goes with the loss of power, because I think having a traumatic experience like that is an extreme loss of power, an extreme loss of control and self. So they really can fear losing control. And I think that's something that they work through in their lives, is working through that fear of abandonment, working through that fear of loss of power and loss of control in terms of their lives. So this is similar to Chiron in the 8th house. And some of these themes can play out in terms of power struggles, your sexuality, death and transformation and rebirth. You really have the inherent knowledge about all these themes. So, fear of attachment can occur because you don't want to have to go through this traumatizing experience that you did in the past over again. So Chiron in Sagittarius or Chiron in the 9th house. So when Chiron is placed in the sign of growth and expansion and luck, philosophy, religious views in terms of mind expansion and a broaden horizons in that area. Basically, you appreciate all of those things, but you have a hard time applying that to your own life, and that could be because of early childhood. Maybe your parents forced you to be a certain religion, or some philosophies and worldviews were placed upon you that you did not necessarily agree with. So in turn, you just felt like you had to bury your own views and you had to bury your own opinions and your own view on the world. And that was just a very painful experience for you. This led you to feel insecure about your beliefs or holding some sort of pain and difficulty in feeling like a lucky person and feeling like, the world is, turning in your favor. You may believe in the power of positivity in terms of manifestation, but you may not really practice it yourself because you just didn't feel like you ever had that or that ability, or you never really were lucky enough to experience that in your life. And this is similar to when Chiron is placed in the 9th house. It can manifest itself in terms of your, travel and experiencing the world and expanding your views, expanding your philosophy. You could have been very sheltered as a child and just didn't experience those things, but you really had the capacity and you really wanted to learn more about the world, and you always knew there was something out there, but you may have felt limited in terms of that. You also may have had difficulty going to university and fitting in and functioning well there. There may have been some difficulty with that. There may be difficulty when you travel long distance and when you go to other countries, and you may experience certain things that are not that positive. But a way to flip this energy and really heal from it is somebody who could be an excellent philosopher or teacher or professor, or someone that, just for instance, a travel blogger, just a very modern example, someone that gets out of their own backyard and travels and experiences the world and teaches other people about their experiences. That is an excellent way to heal from past life and just feeling sheltered and never really having that expansive view on the world. Chiron was last in the sign of Capricorn in 2001. And basically, Chiron and Capricorn children just felt that, they could have grown up in a very strict household, in a household that was all about prestige, all about status. But they were made to feel like they weren't enough through this, environment that was created around them, or they just had such a rigid lifestyle that, I think to rise above all of that, they could become power hungry and obsessive in terms of their career and gaining a certain status and gaining money and gaining certain achievement to prove to the people earlier in their life, whether it be their family or their friends, that they are enough. So they can get quite obsessed with that. And, they could make great mentors, career mentors, or people that help uplift other people's troubled careers. But they can just also, in a negative light, become very obsessed with status, and just really place some difficult expectations on themselves and are very hard on themselves because that's the way that they were treated when they were younger. So, this can be very painful because you feel like you can never really live up to the status and to the level that was placed upon you when you were younger. And this is similar when Capricorn is in the 10th house. No matter what sign it's in, it manifests itself in terms of your career, in terms of your status and your public image and how the public sees you. There can be, some difficulty in terms of, you may face some setbacks in your career. You may get that high prestige job and then all of a sudden, get laid off or get fired or have something painful happen that, puts another wounding on your soul, and just makes you feel like, your world is ending. But, the key with Chiron in Capricorn or Chiron in the 10th is to not let your status and not let your career title or let this part of your life rule your self-worth and who you are, because you are more than just, this high-paying job. You are more than just being successful. And unfortunately, as a child, that wasn't completely taught to you. That was taught that was all there was to life, and that is what you need to do, to be accepted and to, for your parents to be proud of you. And that is, not the case. So that is, something painful to work through. But I think through, some of the incidents that happen and through childhood, through adulthood even, and going through the ups and downs in your career, you can really learn that is not all there is to life, and work to heal yourself through helping other people and achieving success and attaining their goals on their end. So moving on to Chiron in Aquarius, or Chiron in the 11th house. So when Chiron is in the sign of the collective consciousness, the humanitarian, this is all about groups and friends and networks. This is your hopes and your dreams. You are a very social person, and you do love being surrounded by your friends and associates. You do love being social, and you can feel collective pain and be conscious on that level in terms of what is going on with other people. But in early childhood or past life, you may have felt rejected by the collective. You may have been thought of as weird, or, you may have not really felt comfortable in larger group settings. So as a result, you felt quite insecure in terms of large group settings and social settings. But, you found your own tribe. People with Chiron in Aquarius find their own group of like-minded individuals that understand them and accept them. And I think as a result, you really can encourage others to march to the beat of their own drummer, or you accept individuality and you accept differences. This is someone that can champion diversity. This is someone that can, really be a humanitarian or a freedom fighter. And this is a way that someone with this placement can really help themselves. So Chiron was in Aquarius about 2005 and 2010. And so moving on to Chiron in the 11th house, this Chiron energy, no matter what sign Chiron is placed in, can manifest itself in your network, in your groups, your friends, your loose connections, manifesting itself in your hopes and your dreams and your wishes. So people with Chiron in the 11th can, kind of similar to Chiron in Aquarius, just feel like they don't belong in a group setting or can have anxiety about what people think of them. Sometimes people could gossip behind their back or say certain things. Similar as well, there's some, similarities with Chiron and Aquarius. You find your own tribe and you find like-minded people. But you realize later in life that you can help people who may have social anxiety disorders, or people who are not comfortable public speaking or being in public, people who, the odd one out and don't fit in. You can champion people like that and causes in general. This is the humanitarian house. So people who have this placement really feel deeply for the collective, and in order to heal the pain that they've had with their experiences with the collective and groups, they can take part in certain charities, and that helps heal themselves and heal this wounding in their life. So moving on to Chiron in Pisces, or Chiron in the 12th house, which I'm actually a Chiron in the 12th house, so I'm speaking from experience. So first we'll talk about Chiron in Pisces, and actually Chiron just left Pisces earlier this year and moved into Chiron in Aries, and that last degree of Chiron in Pisces was a very painful one, I think, for a lot of people. This happened in March, in April. So a lot of people, in the first quarter of this year, went through some difficult experiences and some difficult pain. And I actually did a video on Chiron in Pisces and that shift. If you would like to watch that, watch in the link below. But basically, people with Chiron in Pisces can just be extreme empaths, to the point that they can become self-sacrificing and find that they end up giving and giving and giving and giving, and just don't take in return. And so this is similar to a Chiron in Cancer, that they give from an empty cup. And I think they also can draw in toxic people. People with empathic abilities, who are natural healers, can draw in toxic people into their lives, who end up take, and they don't get anything back. So that is the serious wounding that could be from childhood and even past life. You felt that you were always sacrificing yourself for the needs of others and never really feeling fulfilled yourself. Lack of self-care is another huge thing that happens when an unhealed or unchecked Chiron in Pisces is in your birth chart. And this is similar to Chiron in the 12th. So I have Chiron in Gemini in the 12th house. But Chiron in the 12th is similar in the fact that you have access to the wounding, subconscious wounding of other people. So you can identify pain very easily, and you can become an exceptional healer and spiritual teacher, and someone that can give positive energy and give yourself to other people and shift their lives. People who have this placement have extreme psychic ability in terms of feeling other people's pain. They can walk into a room and just know essentially how people are feeling and what they're thinking and what the general climate is of a room, just extreme empathic abilities. So I think my advice for someone with Chiron in Pisces or Chiron in the 12th is understanding your boundaries, watching who you let into your life, because extremely toxic people can easily slip in, and then you feel, empathy for them and you want to help, but, you have to take care of yourself. As I said before, you can't give from an empty cup, so you have to take care of yourself and make sure you're receiving back everything that you're giving. There's nothing wrong with there being an even exchange of energy. So making sure that, you are not completely giving yourself and sacrificing everything for the good of everyone else, and just completely forgetting about your own health and your own well-being. So that was Chiron through the signs and houses. Thank you. And if you have any questions about your Chiron placement, ask me in the comments below. And also, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification so you can get a quick reminder when my videos are posted. And I hope everyone has an amazing and fulfilling day. Bye.